Hi, my name is Rod Simpson. I'm going to cover today looking at Essentials AI course. That's the British Computing Society BCS course on Essentials for AI. This is either a quick introduction as to what you're going to encounter on the syllabus, or could even be seen as a revision. So if you're trying to revise this course, watching this video could be very helpful to you. What I first want to talk about is the overview of what's going to happen. You're going to get the intro to AI. Please note, this course is not going to teach you how to use AI. It's just showing you, here's all your options, here's the things to think about when you're dealing with AI. We're going to talk about the ethics. We're going to be talking about data. We're going to be talking about the enablers for AI. We're going to be talking about how we use AI in our organizations. And finally, we're going to be talking about the future of AI. All very touch the surface. This is normally a 2-day, sometimes can even be squeezed into a 1-day course. Just meant to introduce the subject so people are aware of what they could be getting themselves into with AI. So within the introduction to AI, we need to be thinking about such things as, what is intelligence? And defining human intelligence. Well, if we define human intelligence, we might want to define artificial intelligence. What's the difference? What is machine learning? All these sorts of things we want to be thinking about. Also, maybe what we mean by scientific intelligence, specifically the empiricalism, where we're testing theories, we're then proving that they're true or not. We need to be talking about the history of AI. Starting with the Dartmouth conference. Understanding we went through AI winters, where funding was not available or readily forthcoming, and even then going on to talk about how big data has really revolutionized our ability to use AI. We might even want to talk about, I'm probably going to misspell this. Let's see if I've got it written down here somewhere. AS. Assimilar, basically showing those principles behind how we should be using AI. And we will talk about types of AI. Specifically, the difference between narrow, such as a self-driving car, can't really play music or create music or have conversations with you. It's there to do a specific job. And general, something that can do lots of things. It can create pictures. It can understand what's going on in a picture. It can have conversations with you. It can give you emails, such as our large language models when they are plus, such as OpenAI. This is called weak. This is called strong. We also need to understand about what's the difference between ethics and legal. Ethics are things we feel are wrong. Legal are things that we shouldn't be doing because we're going to get in trouble. These are the rules we must obey. If we don't, we're in trouble. Ethics, these are our own personal guiding views, could be in a company, could be as an individual. We need to understand the difference. We have concerns when it comes to AI. It's going to affect the world. How are those concerns going to come out? Well, we could have bias. If AI is being trained on poor data, it can end up with problems. We're going to have data privacy issues. Running out of room there. And we can have an economic impact. There are certainly people who are going to have their jobs removed or massively altered because of AI. And we want to be talking about those principles, principle guidelines, sorts of things we need to be thinking about. How safe is our system? You wouldn't be happy driving in a car which hasn't got a decent safety record. How transparent? Other things to think about. Is it consistent? So transparent, can we figure out what's happened? Consistent, can we show it consistently comes up with the similar sort of result rather than doing something bizarre? Is it accountable? You wouldn't be happy getting in a car again where there was no one going to be held to account if it did crash. Is it fair? These are all some of our principles that we actually know. That's not one of my, yes, it is fair. Our ethics. So we need to understand and have our good ethics in place when we are dealing with AI. Interestingly enough, it used to be, and I still think it is in some AI circles, deemed not reasonable to install AI into warfare stuff. I suspect that is one that goes very quickly to the wall as soon as you're in the middle of a war, in the middle of a conflict. We need to talk about our enablers for AI. We're going to be talking about examples, things we can do with AI. We need to be talking about robotics. The different types of learning, machine learning, etc., and some of our machine learning concepts. Sorry, no, that was right. So when we come to talking about the examples, we talk about the human interface. That's not talking about the fact we're plugging chips into us. That's just the, how we deal with these things. Internet of Things, IoT, very important phrase to remember, along with generative AI. Classic examples of generative AI are your large language models that can generate stuff. When we're talking about robotics, what sort of robotics we're talking about? Well, we can talk about things like industrial robotics. We can talk about personal robotics, humanoid. Don't think we've got any on it. Sorry for my misspelling that. I hope I remember correctly. Right. What do we mean by some of these? Industrial robotics, those big manufacturing arms you see coming in and making cars, where you haven't got a labor force anymore. That's an example of industrial robotics. Personal robotics would be something like your Hoover that automatically hoovers around your house. That's a personal robotics. Humanoid would be a robot that looks semi-human and is able to fit within how human beings work, their environments, so understand how to climb stairs, etc. We've got nanobots done at a very small, minuscule level. Um, One other one I'd probably mention is RPA, robotic process automation. Again, a tool you need to understand. This is not a robot as such, but rather the fact we can automate steps. So instead of doing step A, and then as a human being, we intervene and then do a section, and then we start the next step B, that the system can do step A and then kick step B into gear and step C, etc. When it comes to our machine learning, we need to understand the difference between what's machine learning and what is deep learning. So machine learning, well, deep learning is a variety of machine learning. Machine learning generally allows for human interaction, so humans are tuning it, whereas deep learning is just the machine learning on its own. So when it comes to our machine learning concepts, things we can think about is prediction. We can use our machine learning to predict things. Object recognition. We can use it for classification. We can use it for clustering. This is actually some way of a form of classification where you put something into a certain position, say where it fits on a grid, and says, well, if it fits there, it is similar to these other things, therefore I will treat it the same way. And recommendations. These are all good enablers for us to think about. Oh, something I haven't mentioned, by the way. The exam is 20 questions, so it's a very short exam, takes half an hour, maybe a bit longer if English is not your first language or you have some learning challenges. The introduction will probably have 3 questions on it. The ethics, 3 questions. The enablers, 3 questions. Big one, the next big-ish, 4 questions on data, and quite rightly so, because data is helping us drive our AI. Without the big data, it wouldn't be quite so easy. So we need to understand a few key phrases. What is big data? What is structured data? I.e., data that's formatted in some sort of tabular format with columns and rows. What is semi-structured? Things like an email would be semi-structured. So some of it has structure, the CC, the dates, the to, the from, but other bits like the text could be 5 words long, could be 1,000 words long. So it's not really structured, but it is sort of, and unstructured, such as a PDF document. We don't know what's going to be in there. It could have tables, it could have text, it could have pictures. Yeah, all this sort of stuff. And these are some of the terms we have to understand. We need to be thinking about our 5 characteristics. So for good for data to be useful for our AI, it needs to be timely. It has to be in sufficient time. No point asking it to predict something in 3 months' time when it's already 4 months late for the data. It's not going to be useful for us. We need it to be accessed timely. We need it to be accurate. We need it to be consistent. Obviously, accurate. If it's inaccurate, it's not very good. Consistent, that we're showing the same sort of information that's all applicable. It needs to be consistent. What else does it need to be? What's one else? One is just was comes complete. And it must be unique. We don't want duplicate stuff in there, because if we've got duplicate stuff in there, it's going to cause bias within what we're doing. We might want to talk about our risks of the data. What sort of risks are we going to be talking about? Well, we've already mentioned bias. There's some classic stories where Google used AI to try choosing people, sifting through CVs and choosing people, and it rejected virtually all the women because not many women were employed in Google. Therefore, it took the attitude of, well, we can reject those straight away. Misinformation. You'd be pretty upset if you expected your AI system to spit out good stocks and shares to invest in, and it told you the bad ones. When you think about legal, are we breaking the law and other restrictions on what we can do and we can't do with that information? We need to visualize the data. We can visualize it as written format. We can visualize it as verbal, such as your Alexa. You can visualize it as sounds. You can visualize it in a dashboard. We can visualize it as a pictorial thing. So all of these could be good ways to visualize what we're doing. What else do we need to think about? We need to think about key AI concepts. So be able to make sure we understand what is a generative AI, what's a large language model, an LLM. Generative is something that generates output. Now, you could say anything generates output. Something like DALL-E or Claude can generate pictures, they can generate text, all these sorts of things we need to be thinking about. And we might want to think about our uses of the data. This covers quite a wide variety of stuff. So we need to analyze the data. We're going to need to select the data to make sure we've chosen the right data to do this with. We need to prepare the data ready to be used. So we're going to tidy it up, do these other sorts of things. These are all coming under your data scientist. We need to visualize the data. We might want to be talking about the sort of model, selecting the model to use with it. And when we're talking about our model, remember thinking about the training, the testing, the repeat of that until it is eventually as good as it can be. We'll probably even talk about review. And that's it pretty well for our data. As I said, 4 questions on that. Useful stuff to know about. Making sure that we understand um, these models, whichever they are, have used a lot of stuff in the past to get hold of information. If we put the wrong stuff in, same as we've always ever talked about in IT, garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you put in bias information, don't be surprised when you get biased responses back from your system. Remember, 4 questions on that. Then we move on for another 4 questions to the uses in our organization of AI. One thing I have forgotten to mention, this is for the latest version of the Essentials AI, version 2.0. So if you're doing version 1, slightly different syllabus, this is not all applicable to you. So please bear that in mind. When it comes to uses, we're going to talk about why are we going to be using AI? Well, we're going to want to use it for automation. We want to use it for repetitive tasks. So it removes those repetitive tasks, it automates. It's another form of automation for us. You know, things we need to be thinking about, things like content creation. These are all good uses of why we'd be using AI in our industry. And what is our industry? Well, you know, it can be a massive selection of industries. We'll talk about that in a moment. We'll also talk about project management. How do we manage these projects? And we're going to be talking about waterfall, where we design, we first sort of agree and plan this is what we want to do. We then analyze the environment, we then design it, we develop it, we test it, we implement it. We do these stages one at a time. That's our waterfall, as opposed to our agile, which you would still use the sort of plan at the beginning, but it becomes much more free format as you go through, and you can install several times. And you've even got a hybrid. And I've heard people talk about Wagile, where they mix waterfall with agile to make things happen. We're also going to talk about the governance. What sort of things are we talking about in the governance of our environments? Well, we're talking about compliance. We're going to be talking about managing our risks and understanding the life cycle of our products and even our AI. So these are sort of things, you know, what are we retiring? How are we going to go about doing this? Still important stuff when it comes to AI. You might not seem it at the moment, but it's certainly going to be affecting some organizations. Finally, there's 4 questions on that. So definitely going to get one on the project management, probably a couple on the why we might do it in an organization. Finally, we're probably going to talk about the future. What do I mean by the future? Where is our AI going? I'm going to be honest, you know, this is a little bit hopeful to be able to guess the future, but there are certain things we can be talking about. What are the roles that are going to be involved in the future of AI? Well, we've got our machine learning engineer. We've got someone such as our data scientist. who's there to manage our big data and think about some of the challenges we're going to be involved in it. NLP, natural language processing engineer. These machines that help our understanding of text. That can be included in there. AI research scientist. And maybe we might want to be thinking about a computer vision engineer. And, frankly, we will see these roles come and go in the future. Some may not come about. We want to talk about where we will use AI, which industries. Well, obviously, industry itself, finance, healthcare, entertainment, education. I think of any other. Oh, marketing. These are all areas where AI can make a difference and is already making a difference to what's going on. And driving really forward into the future. Where are we heading? Well, it's often going to be about the human computer interface. How we deal with computers, how we're making them more responsive to us. Well, I actually perhaps should rephrase the computer to be machine, technically. And we need to understand what's happening in the near term and what's going to happen in the long term. And we might be talking about things such as AGI, artificial general intelligence, or even ACI, artificial conscious intelligence. All these sorts of things. So all about the future being more and more collaboration between us and our computers, so it's easier for us to interface with the computers and get more information out from them. So this is what you're going to be involved, and you're going to be learning on the course, and this is what your exams are going to be testing you on. If you're interested and you message me, there's an email coming up shortly. You'll be able to get a discount if you're interested in one of these courses from one of the organizations I train with. If you want 20 questions, be able to practice, and they are not the same ones the BCS give you, you can email me again on the same email asking for 20 questions. They're free. And yeah, practice away. The more practice you get doing questions, the easier it's going to become. If you're interested in this or other exams, I will be doing little bits of synopsis or revision sections for you in future for other courses I also teach. That's it for me, and I hope this has been useful for you.